from Galveston Bay section. The nice thing about the Zoom is that I get to see all kinds of interesting background pictures, all kinds of things. Very interesting.
Actually, I was going to ask, will you guys be recording this?
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Mike Brisbois. I'm the chair of the IEEE Consultant Network Seattle. This afternoon's session is being recorded, so please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Type any questions into the chat box, and we'll address those at 4:45. Our presentation is co-sponsored by the EMBS, the Engineering and Medicine Biology Society. A little bit about our consultant network. We foster and promote the interest of our members and provide professional and technical services. Second, we maintain an online directory for our members. And third, we arrange and provide technical and management talks like we have here tonight. Some of the upcoming events we got is on February 5th, the lunch session, Fire Protection for Substations, IEEE 979 guide. We'll go over that. And then the NFPA 1's, the Fire Code 2021 update changes. And on Friday, the 19th, IEEE, we got a propane fuel cell is going to talk about the low carbon solutions to the future. And then on the 23rd, we got another tech talk with the space weather woman, Dr. Timothy Scoff. She'll be talking about how the sun's radiations affect our day-to-day cell phone coverage and FAA radio waves. So that's you don't want to miss that one. And then on Friday, we have Friday the 26th, we got the harmonic controls and electric power systems. So that should be fun from Xprize, one of the gentlemen are going to be talking on that. And then Friday the 2nd of April, we have the Seattle Electrical Conference, which is about 4 hours starting at 7 a.m. So you don't want to miss those. So tonight's speaker, I'd like to introduce him. Our speaker this evening is Dr. Georgios Bertos. Dr. Bertos is an innovative and visionary medical device cross-functional leader with proven track record of utilizing strategic thinking, business insights, and hands-on technical experience to generate visionary, disruptive medical products with a focus on the marketplace competitiveness. He applies the DFSS, Design for Sigma 6 process and teamwork-based leaderships to ensure quality-driven, efficient, innovative product technology pipeline with an emphasis on teamwork, market intelligence, and new trends. He has extensive systems, biomedical, electrical, artificial intelligence, and software R&D experience in new product development of embedded systems and innovative electromagnetic medical devices, along with a product market strategy, marketing, financing, regulatory, 510K, SAMAD software as a medical device. He has demonstrated successful conceiving, building, and aligning interdisciplinary teams with both internal and external collaborators, spanning from academic to organizers. He has a big corporate academic and startup experience. He specializes in artificial limbs, biometronics, artificial intelligence, infusion systems, and mobile digital health. Dr. Bertos has a BS in electrical computer engineering from the National Technology University of Athens. He has an MS in electrical computer engineering from Northwestern University in Chicago, and an MBA from the University of Chicago, and a PhD from Northwestern University. He worked at a couple companies, GE Health and Baxter. So please welcome Dr. Georgios Bertos. Georgios?
Thank you, Mike. It's nice to be here. So I'll tell you the truth, like Mike approached me and said, do you want to talk about 11073? And, my first answer was yes. So that's how it started. And I'm going to talk about basically IEEE 11073, a medical device, I would say standard for interoperability for medical devices. And as Mike had extensive description of my background. So what is the problem we're trying to solve with the interoperability? So basically, I would say that as we age, the disease, any disease progresses, or the majority of the disease progresses by doing like prevention. We want to prevent the diseases, and then early detection, and then we intervene when it's maybe too late. For example, someone has a heart attack, he could prevent it. He could be on a diet, have a healthy weight, have some monitors, continuous monitors, let's say, which maybe they will come in the future, and we can early detect the onset of conditions. And at some point, that is not useful anymore, and then you have to intervene. You have to go to the ER and do catheterization to take out the blockage. That's too late. We want to work on the prevention and on the early detection. So I would frame the problem that, our vitals now, the data is not collected all the time, is not saved, and is not analyzed somewhere centrally and continuously by an AI, let's say by an artificial intelligence module, in a personalized manner. And that's what we did. That's what we need. And the common denominator for all this data, it's that they are, it's basically multidimensional. So you have like EKG, you have HPO2, different conditions and all these things. So, and we have a lot of medical devices, and that took me back to a problem from history or religion, which was the Babel Tower. So people, at some point, people built it like the tallest building, and then and then they didn't, they couldn't communicate with each other. And what happened is like the whole thing failed, and that's what we see or we have seen in the medical devices space, which is extensive. And to give you like say, the context of where we should play is that. And this is taken from John Wittenberg, a colleague from Philips, through HIMSS. And, we are, who have babies. We are in the cardiology department in the hospitals, in the ICUs, in the operating room, in the ER, in the ambulance, and also at home. So wherever we go, depending on the condition, we might need monitoring or, check our vitals and check our health with those modules that we're talking about. And what are the high level needs for this? Those are, medical errors in the hospitals. They account for, 100,000 deaths in the US per year. It's all another trend is a personalized medicine and a patient-centric medicine. So all the medicine that we have should be focused on ourselves, and we should be the center of it, not the doctor, not the hospital. And also management of chronic conditions, which we know that they are on the rise, like diabetes. And another dimension of this is that the cost. The cost of this is, and this slide is from the past. It was 2.5 trillion in 2009. The healthcare as percentage of the GDP increased from 13% to 37%. It's projected to increase in 2050. The chronic disease, like $3 out of $4 that are spent in the US healthcare system are because of chronic conditions. At the same time, the population is aging, and we see a lot of readmissions in the hospitals and not a lot of doctors. So all this leads that we need all this monitoring that we're talking about. There are different ways of connecting medical devices. One is interconnectivity, and the other one is interoperability. What's the difference? Interconnected systems are basically one-off. A company wants to keep their, a big company wants to keep their competition companies, let's say, or their other companies which are in the market with them out of their system. So they create something which is one-off for them. So they connect all their devices with one system, which basically doesn't talk to the outside world. On the other side, an interoperability system is basically a plug and play system that you plug it in the ecosystem of the healthcare, and then it will play, or it will function. It will send data, it will receive data, and will perform. And there are different levels of interoperability. There is the physical connectivity that we talked about, like as interconnectivity. Then there is plug and code, which is basically with proprietary protocols. There is the plug and pray, that you plug it and you pray that it will work. And then the higher level is the semantic interoperability, where we basically plug and test. And if we can have access to the other companies, let's say, or send data to the other company's medical device and have authentication, authorization, and association, then we're on the plug and find, which is kind of the highest level. The ease of integration is getting higher as we move to the right, but we must have done more work to go to that higher level, and that's shown by the process complexity. So what would be the right architecture? We have one, the entropy says that, we have a lot of unaligned devices. So what we're going to do, it's similar to a problem that used to be in computers with USBs and MP3 and MP4, like IEEE or a body created like a protocol or a standard that basically said this is the format that we should read USB and sound and video. And then everyone complied. And then you put a USB, you put it in one computer with one operating system, then you also can put it in another operating system if it's the right format. But what is the trade-off that companies are afraid, are working against that? Why they don't want their data to be shared, or why they don't want to be part of an ecosystem which is using them? It's basically greediness. And so, companies want to make money, and they feel that the more closed the system is, the more money they will get, because they will have to the hospitals will buy will buy only from them. They won't buy any other medical devices from other vendors. But that's not the right way to go, because that way you cannot build big systems, and you cannot take advantage of the plethora of medical devices that exist today. And that's where interoperability comes into place, and you have modularity, and you have less time to market. And that's something that all companies should think about. Now in the patient-centric world, we have to be able to participate in all these open ecosystems, and that's something we should do as companies, IEEE, bodies of regulation, and also the world. And that's where we have 11073. It's an IEEE medical device interoperability standard, which has been around for a lot of years, I would say. The adoption was not great, but it's getting there. And as we said, the force that is competing against this, it's that sharing your device, sharing your data is something that is inherently going against the business people. They think that it's not maximizing their profits, but it's not correct. So we start. A couple of the standards are about what we call the Rosetta Stone. It's Rosetta Stone is like I think it's an ancient like artifact in archaeology from stone that were writing on the commands. So Rosetta Stone was named for all the nomenclature that all the different devices and all the values that they should have, and all the vendors agree to basically participate on that. And this is one of the lowest levels of interoperability, and many companies comply to that. Then there is in the middle, we see the basic model, which defines basically the layers 5 to 7 of the OSI, 5 to 7 layers, which is basically an agent and a manager for the device, and maybe a cell phone that is connected to it. And then there is also another standard for service-oriented architecture, and also some other ones for the transport layers, if it's cabled or wireless. And that's where we have basically all these different medical devices, and each of them has a standard and a way that it's a common way of communicating with other devices. Imagine that here is like a cell phone, and you can communicate with SpO2, like an insulin pump, the weight scale, a blood pressure monitor, ECG, apnea, sleep apnea monitor, body composition, and even fitness devices. And this, then we have all these devices can communicate with all these different transport layers and go to the healthcare manager, and from there to the physician and to the cloud, where we say, we believe that now it's a time after we get rid of all this Vavel problem, then it's time to do something meaningful and work on the data and have artificial intelligence on it. And I think that, there are companies which are basically doing this now, and we are getting a lot of value out of it. There is also the other paradigm, like smartphone companies, they have, they measure also SpO2 and heart rate, and they don't interoperate with other devices. And is this the way to go? It seems like it's a closed system. There are other devices which are smartphones, and they might be communicating or interoperate with other IoTs or other medical devices, and that might be coming up in the future more. So we have two basically spaces. One is the hospital, and IHE is an organization. It means integrated in the healthcare environment, which is basically has created a lot of profiles. By profile, we mean use cases that are coming from the needs from the hospital, and they are have been published for for a long time. Some of them have been adapted a lot, some of them not a lot, but the major ones are, which are concerning 11073, are the patient care devices, where basically all the devices are sending commands, PCD01, PCD02, PCD03, PCD04, C5 and 6, which are basically saying, I did an infusion therapy, or I received this data from the hospital, and this is now I'm sending data back to the hospital. Then there is a device point of care interoperability, which is more on a local place without involving the layer of the network of the hospital. And then there is also the personal connected health, which is how we take these devices at home or in a mobile environment. And this is about the PCD profile, and these are all these were at some point all the different devices that were sending data, from infusion systems or patient monitors up to the layers of the different layers of the network, and from there they were consuming. A device can send data and act as a reporter, and also another device can act as a consumer and can get data from the network. And you see that you have the different areas of the hospital, OR, ICU, and step down. So why this would prove to be beneficial? For companies to simplify the product development, it gave more time to innovate rather than support the infrastructure and reinventing the world, and taking care of all these lower level of layers of communication, and concentrating on the meaningful things, which are, what the therapy should be, and how should I intervene with the therapy. Also facilitates clinical decision support and innovation. Reduces the regulatory impact because FDA likes interoperability and likes to be have all the medical device to be participating into this to this ecosystem, which is regulated and tested. For example, by NIST or labs, But FDA actually is pro interoperability. It creates more modularity, and also reduces the liability that you have as a company. If you have a device and you know that you send the data at a specific time, no one can accuse you that you didn't send it or you didn't inform the hospital for for what happened to the patient. The device point of care integration, it's a different profile from IHE, and it's more on a local context. And basically you have infusion pump, for example, a patient monitor, and be all these to be like communicating with each other with a gateway, and all this could be in a closed loop scenario, or help on the clinical decision support for the good of the patient. It hasn't been adopted so much as far as much as the PCD, but it's there. Now there is the service-oriented connectivity, which is, there is a lot of open source code, and this is one of the latest profiles of IHE, and you see examples of this code in which is open, and this is an example of all these devices interconnected in one of the trade fair. At home, on the other side, for a period of time, or for a long time, Continua, came up to be around 2000, in the 2000s. And, they basically, their vision was about wellness and how we are not regulated as devices. And we are concentrating on the prevention that I showed you before. And so in Continua, which also is using 11073, you have a lot of devices, weight scales and SpO2 and glucose monitor, which are programmed from their manufacturer, because they participate in Continua and they're marked by the Continua with a Continua level of authorization, that they communicate with personal health gateways like smartphones, which also are participating and are tested in Continua, and then from there to servers, and from there to apps that the doctor could read. So this is at home. And this is, another way of looking at it. So you have all the different, devices, which many of them are not even medical devices, and like an activity monitor is on the medical devices, and the medical device, and they are connected with different ways, with a Bluetooth, a Zigbee, and from there, from the smartphone to the servers, and from there to the health information network of the hospital. So you know that this is like an old cell phone. So this slide is older. It's around 2000, around late 2000s, but the architecture has not changed. And of course, HL7 and Fire is helping on standardizing all these links. So what is the FDA is thinking about this? So the FDA recently has lowered actually the regulation for clinical decision support. So if you are a system or a system of systems which you are based on these, let's say, devices, and you communicate with these, I would say, standardized protocols, which the code is out there that you can have it, and then you have a module that is doing some clinical decision support for the doctor, then in some cases, or in many cases, when you don't recommend something or you don't say something, but you just present the data and you say, this is like what the data is, and then the doctor is making the decision, then it's not actually a medical device. Then there is a software as a medical device, the SAMD, which is also in the last 2 years. And it's another entry point for companies like Google and Apple to go into the healthcare space. And that, for example, gave to Apple the ability to have for the Apple Watch not to have the whole watch as a medical device, but only the app that measures the SpO2 or the heart rate to be the software as a medical device, and also the band. So FDA, as I said, is pro modularization stemming from this interoperability, because that way we know exactly how we can build actually bigger systems and system of systems, and we can also pinpoint to who the faulty medical device is in the case of an accident, for example. In addition, recently the FDA published the proposed framework for AI and machine learning and SMD together. So FDA is seeing that this adds value to the whole healthcare system. So I'll show you like one example that I did. We did a few 5 to 6 years ago with taking an example. So the idea was, as we said, even that time we were predicting that an integrated medical device aiming to perform a reliable self-diagnosis and assessment for a set of conditions. And this was a competition that was initiated from Qualcomm tricorder. They were basically saying that, if you remember the Star Trek, the doctor had like a device which was called tricorder, and he could always look at the tricorder and say what was the problem. And so based on that marketing element, Qualcomm gave through the Xprize, was giving out like 10 millions to whoever was going to be the winner for this competition. And the market for, we don't have to say a lot, but there are 7 billion people on Earth, 2/3 with little or no access to healthcare, and the smartphone are growing. The increased aging and the need for reliable diagnosis, and there are almost 1 million cases of stroke every year in the US, and also 600,000 of heart attacks. And these are big markets. So the condition set was for core conditions was anemia. You have to be able to diagnose anemia at home, urinary tract infection, diabetes type 2, atrial fibrillation, stroke. And here you see like the numbers that are affected, sleep apnea, and then also you could do a lot of elective diseases, which were mostly related to blood, otitis and hepatitis A, and then also COPD is another one, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and tuberculosis. So these were the set of conditions. So the proposed system that we did at that time was that we have devices from Continua, like measuring temperature, ECG, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and SpO2, and also biosensing platform from blood, urine, septum, and breath, and an impedance device, which is basically measuring the impedance on the chest. And this was put like as a t-shirt, let's say, for example, and accelerometers, which basically could give a lot of data for the condition of what the individual was doing, and then based on the Continua architecture, we're building this system using some of the Continua code, and then connecting to the cloud and to the EHR for the personal health record or the electronic health record, etc. So the uniqueness of this was that it had novel biosensing technology for real-time monitoring of physiological parameters, a modern expert system based on artificial intelligence, and also it was plug and play, because we took all these devices which were available in the market, and we basically worked on the work that the Continua had done before. As far as business, disruption of the already existing business models. So the doctor-patient is transformed now to a patient-centric model. and also is trying, I mean, it's basically this is transforming the healthcare ecosystem. So all this was supposed to give like to the individual a way of assessing the condition without involving the doctor, or the doctor could also be informed of the data. So don't think of that this is outside of the doctor bubble. You know, I have a friend and he had a heart attack, and he went to the doctor after his surgery, and the doctor found out that he had his beats per second were 150. And he said, oh, I don't know for how long you have this. If you had a system like this, you know, and you would send this to the doctor could say, oh, you have this for X number of days. And even if we had programmed it for alarming, the doctor could have called him to go to the hospital or intervene before his regular appointment. And also the value of this ecosystem is that you have the plug and play with the ability for other devices, and that way you can build, as I said, system of systems. So the system is open, not closed, as many companies in the past were thinking, and it's a collaboration or a collaborative ecosystem, and gives like value to the synergies. It's there is a saying which says the value of the total is sometimes, I mean, it's many times bigger than the sum of the parts. So when you create this big ecosystem and you act on the data, then there is a value added because of that. And with this, we can again manage the chronic conditions, for example, you know, diabetes, for example, or you know, COPD, or you know, but also identify conditions which are abrupt, like for example, you know, atrial fibrillation at home, or and all this can be sent to the doctor. So as conclusive, I would say that, you know, interoperability of a medical device using 11073, which is an IEEE effort that it's encompassing the whole spectrum of the medical device interoperability, is you know, you basically, it's valuable. You have to participate in the ecosystem to get you get value out of this. You reduce your development time because you get code, and open source code, and also reduces the regulatory footprint, because in some cases you can rely on other devices to build a system which is of a higher level, and that way you don't have to include the SPO2, for example, in your submission. You just have to include your portion of that where you add value. You just get data from them. And resources for you if you want to try this are, as I said before, the integrated healthcare environment, where you see the profiles, and also the PCHA Alliance, which is basically the old Continua, where you can get code from for home, the home paradigm. And this is my contact information. So I would, you know, go to questions if you have any.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? You can raise your hand, speak out. I have a bunch of basic questions. So I assume one of my questions is a bad code. So if somebody writes bad code, you said it's open source, I guess you'd trace it back to the device?
I mean, all this goes through testing. So Continua has like actually quarterly meetings which is called connectathons, and basically all this is going through the testing and the you know, checking of the code and checking of the device.
Okay, so nobody has anything.
And it's controlled by Continua. So you know, you cannot. I mean, when I say, I mean, some code is open source, but a lot of code is controlled by Continua, and you actually have to pay a membership to become a Continua member, or a Personal Connected Health Alliance member.
Okay. So,
Mike?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a medical doctor, but I was just thinking about an architecture where the hardware can have some kind of integrator with multiple inputs which are coming either RF link or through internet, where say for example, it accepts, say, I'm talking of an integrator where data is coming. And though, say, for example, um, data one have options of you can select it as a temperature or EKG or whatever they are. And so those 10, for example, those inputs which are coming, this integrate, it is continuously receiving, and those data is being updated into, say, for example, in the bins, which you can define on those. Uh, and then you have the analytic, which will analyze that one and provide that one to the user, to the doctors, so that they can say that this parameter with this parameter with this parameter trend is going to really tell us that this is this particular disease. And also they can, based on that, they can decide on really what type of treatment could be done on the real time. I'm just thinking in terms of like, for example, you have a trauma a trauma incident where they want to look at the oxygen and the how much consumption is there, and other breathing, so on and so forth. And they want to see the temperature and they want to see the trend, and the integrator actually continuously taking that, and your analytics is analyzing that one and putting in different forms, make it available to the doctor user to make a decision. I was just thinking of in simple terms. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is possible, and there are some problems. For example, that the ER doctor that you mentioned, how is he going to have access to the patient data? So these are, but all the remaining that you described it has been done, or it is being done by companies, and they store the data on databases on the cloud using. I saw another question about security. We want to have a security on the cloud, so there are extra measures for being secure and also being HIPAA compliant. So we cannot have the identity of the patient, but all this is possible, and there are different ways that you can do this. There are the modular ways and more of the open architecture. And also there is the other one, which is like a smartphone company is creating all these and is making available to the doctor through the patient's, let's say, smartphone. By having it as a medical emergency, the doctor can open his cell phone and see the data.
Now, I don't want to take too much time, but again, the way the cancer and leukemia and all those things, the doctor looks at if there are similar situation of the patients, and then they look at the history, and then look at their patients, whatever those parameters are there, and then they decide the protocol for that particular patient. Now, in the same token, if this kind of thing is available, then I think it is going to make a great help. I'm
Right.
talking of AI and expert system and
Right. Yes. Because the same way as you described, like for oncology, that we have a database of healthy or diseased patients and they look at the history, the same way has to be done or is being done also for conditions like heart attack. So we collect data from people that are not having heart attack and also for people who are having heart attack. And then the AI system is trained to discriminate on the condition and then also personalize it when you apply it on the specific patient. So all this is becoming now possible.
Thank you. You
Okay.
referred to the big data and PYTHIA and all that. So I was just looking at adding this particular kind of algorithm so that it can help. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for
we
your
got,
for questions.
we got
Are
another
there?
question in the chat. I'd like to know how safe the data stored inside a cloud and how healthcare companies could take advantage of it. So how safe is the data stored in the cloud?
So usually what happens is like a healthcare company will have a service that is ensuring access to a secure cloud. But the, you know, I cannot say that everything everything is 100% secure. So, FDA is giving a lot of attention on what we call cybersecurity. So healthcare companies which are designing or sending data on the cloud or on servers, they have to go through extra hoops to basically make sure that all the risk management is correct for all the devices. That and we have extra ways of authenticating and having security. So by in some cases that you have we say that we want to have an open ecosystem, but we don't want to accept the intruders. So that's why so at some point you have to create your boundary. So what we say when we say we create an open ecosystem, that means that we have a device X, Y, and Z assigned through our system, let's say to Mike, and then if another device comes into play and tries to go into that system, then it will be rejected. And again, if on the cloud there Mike's data and someone and only Mike, their encryption or say cryptography processes with keys and all these things that are basically giving the ability to have like a unique key at each time to be issued. So then there is no easy way of identifying that key. I mean, I have seen for security, I have seen companies which are not getting the data from the cloud, but instead sending the data in the cloud to be executed. So in that way, you don't have transmission of data, because it seems that the data is more important than the code.
Okay, we got another question here. How do the NIST 800 series standards relate to the IEEE 11073?
Yeah, I mean, I don't exactly. I know that so NIST has basically taken the task of testing a lot of interoperability 11073 devices, and is issuing like a letter that's saying that this is compliant, this is approved. So I don't know exactly what the NIST 800 is, but if you give me some, I can probably look it up. And
AJ. I have another question. Latency issues for like remote surgeries. Is that improving with the edge computing, 5G? Can you talk a little bit about that, or do you know anything about that?
so we're now in the robotic surgery space in the OR, and the vision is maybe to go and have the robotic surgery from not 5 feet from the patient, but from 500 miles away, right?
Right.
So, I mean, again, as you have seen, there, for example, Amazon has like, can guarantee or will guarantee like speeds of, of a lot of megabps per second, and also redundancy. So if you, it's guaranteed to be, I would say, 99.9999 whatever % up and have high speed. So I don't doubt that these systems are going to be available. And it all depends on the traffic and the cybersecurity, the intruders. You have the best system, but then if it's compromised, then it's going to go down. So, in the best case scenario, yes, this is possible. And I don't know if it's one of the high priority user needs of robotic surgery companies, but I would say yes.
Okay, I have another question. Can you talk a little bit about the chips? I heard that they can embed chips in you with all your medical information. Is that happening, or is that just in Star Trek movies?
So I know that this, I mean, in Germany, they wanted to implant like a microchip which will have your patient record. And then also, so in the case, so this is a solution, for example, in the case that you go to the ER, to the emergency room, and then, you know, you cannot say your name, and the doctor can download your data from your microchip. But I haven't seen it in the works. I imagine that there is a lot of resistance for, but implants are there for, and implanted devices which are communicating with the low power Bluetooth or other forms of personal area networks are coming, and in some cases they can also resolve conditions that have not been resolved. Or you know, in the case of prosthetics that I'm working on, we have put in implanted devices to improve the quality of grasping, for example. So it's how you use technology. It has to be the right way of using the technology. It's not how the car is not good or bad. It's how you drive it. So
can you talk a little bit about the IEEE 11073? Are you a part of the code committee? And then the second part of the question is, after reading the code, I guess it's about 64 pages. Is there anything that you could add personally to the code to improve it? Does that make sense?
yes, I mean, how it works is that, you know, Continua and IHE has committees that basically are committees that are basically are discussing the profiles. For example, IHE, and also Continua. You have to be a member of Continua, and you have to pay, if you're a company, you have to pay substantial amount of money to be able to participate in this kind of steering committees. And then you have the ability to come up with, for example, I remember, I mean, at Continua has meetings every quarter, and a lot of companies are going there, which are members or full members. And, you know, there are working groups that, for example, back in 2010, when I was going to the Continua meetings, that we were discussing and we were approving the code for the activity monitors at that time. So all these are working sessions and all this, and you don't really, I mean, they give you kind of a protocol to implement. So there is also a way of getting SDKs from Continue or other parties to work on that code, or to work on implemented versions of those protocols. But it's not exactly like, I would say, an open source that you can go change it and then the other person can download it. And but if you find something, then you can propose to fix it or improve it.
So do we have any other questions from the audience? I have one more question. So what are you working personally on now? You said the Python project. Is
The
there any,
PYTHIA.
is
Yeah,
there any
I'm
other
working on
projects that
the
you're
PYTHIA
working
project.
on?
Yeah,
What-
I'm trying to make like one of these for Greece, actually, with a friend of mine, and because, you know, the coronavirus is actually now more, it became suddenly very popular, this way of telehealth, and you have seen like a lot of activity there. But also I'm working on a way of monitoring also with the sensors, the shock absorption ability of amputees or of runners, to basically prevent deterioration of their spinal cord, of their musculoskeletal system, their knees and their back.
Like in, I think September, October, we had the astronaut talk to us, and when you're in space, you become longer and shorter, and it was very interesting.
Longer or shorter?
Longer.
Longer.
I mean, yeah, I guess you expand, I guess.
I see.
And then when you come back, you shrink.
A little bit. I mean, if you are staying there for a long time, I mean, a
Right.
few months.
Yeah. So, well, he was Dr. Michael Barrett. He was working on the mission to Mars. So, if somebody's going to sustain 2 years in space, what are they going to look like? And he was very positive that we would be able to do it by 2039. So,
Wow. Elon is trying to do that earlier. Elon Musk.
Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to mandatory. So all that you mentioned, all these codes, all these the transport layer, all the layers of the is FDA pushing this to get out to all the devices talk to each other, or do they actually talk to each other now?
No, they yes. FDA is pushing is pro interoperability, and I have been in FDA meetings where FDA is basically thinking on how they regulate interoperable systems, and that's where NIST comes into place. So if a device gets the NIST, the National Institute, Standards and Technology kind of stamp, then that means that it's one module in the link that has been it doesn't have a high risk. So I mean, FDA is after the high risk areas. So but FDA is giving, as I said, it has been publishing those software as a medical device, which has given the ability to Google and Apple and Amazon and Microsoft to go slowly into the healthcare systems and to the healthcare system. And what we see is that the traditional medical device companies now will have like new entrants, and it might not be so easy for them, because on the one hand, those tech companies have a lot of money, and and this is like a huge problem. It's kind of you want to, there are endless opportunities here in healthcare, and it's very also important to solve them. And that's why you see Apple, working on all these problems one at a time.
So can I talk about that for just a second? The FDA is allowing Google and Apple and Microsoft to work in the United States on new technologies. An example would be like the drones. The FAA wasn't allowing the drones to go in here. So Amazon took the drones to London to do the tests on. So now they're bringing it back. I was just questioning this for the medical field that you represent. Is any new technologies is being done in the United States? Is that correct?
No. I mean, there are a lot of. A big company has offices and R&Ds in many different countries. So it's the US, it's also in other countries where the labor is cheaper. But it's not an unusual practice to launch something in Europe or in other places in the world in order to get data, and then go to the US with more data.
Okay.
So
we got one question from the audience. Are foreign governments equivalent to the FDA pushing interoperability within their countries?
Yes, I would say EU, because now EU is aligning their regulatory guidelines to be more like the FDA. So EU is pushing for that also. And there is in Europe, it's more fragmented, so each government has to believe. And so, for example, there companies which basically are trying to do also continua and personal health in Europe. But you see a lot of these systems and AI more in the Taiwan or Korea or China.
Okay. So I got one last question. So where do you see us in 5 years? What do you see developing in 5 years from now?
I think that the coronavirus actually gave an extra boost to all these things, because you were trying to get funding or for this kind of for the PYTHIA, let's say, that I had. It wasn't easy. No one the healthcare system, one way or the other, was built more on the you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, he's the only one who knows about the sensors and all these things. So now they had the need for having telehealth. And now I think it was an initial boost. And actually there was government money for hospitals or for places where the geriatric places to have telehealth, and it was funded by the government. But if we have an extended, let's say, or another virus or things like that, or something like that, I think it's going to give an extra boost. And not to mention that artificial intelligence has done tremendous steps in the past years, and this is now more possible. And I see a lot of startup companies to have and add value and find their way out. And now with the participation of all the big tech giants, I would say, which have money, I wouldn't be surprised if all these, changes, because imagine that Apple or Google has like a watch that can do all these things. What is going to happen? Everyone is going to buy it. So and the price can go up. Yeah. So it's about, it's very valuable.
So I assume when you're working on these projects, you need patents, right?
Yes.
Is a good assumption. Okay.
I mean, for some things, there are things which you cannot patent, and there are some things which you can patent.
Okay.
So.
All right, so it's coming to the top of the hour. Does anybody have any last pressing questions that you want to talk to Dr. Georgios Bertos? I just want to thank him. Okay, well, we thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.
Like I mentioned, this presentation will be published on the website shortly after this presentation, so if you want to share it with your friends. And we thank everybody for coming today, and we'll see you next month for the Space Weather Woman for the Tech Talk. So that should be a great one too, so don't miss that.
Thanks, Mike.